The problems began here. First Prince of the Kingdom, Renato di Rubini, annulled his engagement to our heroine, Maria Anovazzi, effective immediately in front of everyone.
Oh no, again. We're doing another show where the girl is getting her marriage annulled. Guys, I've heard this plot before.
We have to turn back to a bright sunny day in the kingdom of Rubini's royal capital, a day where the carriage from House Anovazzi arrived. Maria was excited to see her dear friend, Ida Amethyst, daughter of Duke Amethyst, close enough to refer to Maria as Mimi. It had been 2 years since Maria had last seen them, so she had to make an ecstatic welcome, especially since the Duke had agreed to become her guardian. Her attendant had told her to mind her manners though, and so she fixed her composure to curtsy gracefully. The Duke chuckled, telling her he didn't mind. Her easygoing personality helped his daughter many times in the past. He hoped she'd keep Ida company again. That being said, his daughter was no longer a Duke's daughter now that they no longer lived in Maria's kingdom of Muro. Ida was about to join the royal family by wedding the prince as well. Mimi got fired up, promising to do whatever she could to protect her. Sitting down for tea, Mimi casually brought up how Ida was going to marry the prince of this country. She had so many questions for her, like how they decided to get together. She knew House Amethyst and Anovazzi were just distant relatives, but she felt so proud of Ida. She'd gasp, hearing Ida calmly say it was just her father's one-sided decision, now asking about Ida's feelings. Of course, Ida felt incredibly honored, but she had no right to refuse. Switching topics, Ida asked Mimi why she decided to transfer to the academy here. And what about her family back at home? Maria told her this was the perfect all-in-one. It was all described in the letter she sent before coming here. While doing her usual practice with the family nights, the maid came calling for her, bringing her news that her baby brother had just been born. Mimi was so excited to see him. He was soft and warm. Her father was excited to finally have an heir, and so he told Mimi to get out and go find a husband as quickly as possible.
That's it. So she spent all her life running the family martial arts dojo, and now that a boy is born, she's kicked out.
Ida felt bad. She had no idea, since Mimi had been training hard to become the successor of House Anovazzi since childhood, studying, exercise, and heavy training. So many things a normal noble lady never had to do. Mimi didn't think that way though. Even with her not becoming the successor, she thought her skills were still useful in real life. She took off her hair clip, revealing her family photo in what appears to be brass knuckles. Explaining normally, they'd pick a boy to be successor, but all her siblings up to that point were girls. She was just a successor before her brother Teo was born. And being the head of the house was never her dream. She actually couldn't be any happier for her brother taking over. Oh wow, that's good. She's got such a positive outlook on life. She didn't want to be the freeloader sister to the heir, and that's why she declared the need to find the perfect husband. She tried looking in her home kingdom, but all the good ones were taken. Or maybe she just wasn't popular. She also had a bad habit of voicing the exact things I just read out loud. Either way, she was here to go perfect husband hunting. Soon after, Ida guided her to the Royal Academy. This place used to be an educational institution for the sons of royalty. But the previous king before the last decided it's better if the nobility could study here as well. A better method for nobles to get acquainted with each other while young. Mimi took note of all the courteous bows towards Ida, since she was marrying the prince. Well, not all of them. A lot of girls gave scornful looks as well. A boy would greet Ida, and before she could introduce the transfer student, Maria casually cut her off to tell the boy, "Nice to meet ya. Call me Mimi." He looked taken aback, and Maria was shocked to find out he was second Prince Placido. She shrunk back, referring to him as Your Highness, and he chuckled. He was happy to meet her, since Ida always spoke of her. Apparently, he had met Mimi that time Ida was recuperating from her asthma, though he heard Ida was confused and unsure whether she was a boy or a girl. Ida felt embarrassed he brought that up, but Mimi was serious. Back then, she still didn't know how to properly wear a dress, and still struggled with it now. She thought Ida was more elegant in comparison. Placido wasn't so sure though. Back when he first met her, she threw chestnuts at him. They even still had burrs. Ida lit up bright red and told him it was because he teased her by calling her a greedy glutton. Mimi was surprised, since she thought Ida was a perfect, elegant lady from the moment she was born. They then showed Mimi around the school, and she was quite energetic. She was glad Placido was willing to help her endeavors of finding a man to marry. He tried flagging his older brother down, but apparently he didn't hear him. He ran after to go see him. Ida gave a somber look and said she didn't think he'd come over. Placido would explain Renato was too busy with work. He thought even though his brother was way more capable than himself, he had such a stubborn side to him. Renato was both a perfectionist and a workaholic, and Placido was going to join him since their attendant begged him to. With that, Ida asked Mimi if that was enough for the academy tour, and Mimi said, "Yup, I'm good," accidentally smacking away another girl passing by. She'd apologized worriedly to Lady Eleonora Cassiari, and Eleonora forgave them, not wanting to be painted as the villain, despite her first impression of Mimi being a reckless oaf. She told Mimi to be careful from now on, and began to limp as she left? Dang, Mimi is super strong. Ida told Mimi to pay her no mind. That's just how Eleonora spoke. That night in bed, Mimi pondered over how Ida seemed much closer to Prince Placido instead of her fiancé. She speculated Ida was actually engaged to Renato, but didn't seem happy at all. Still, she had to worry about her own endeavors of finding a husband. She wrote her parents a letter with exuberance. It read, "Father, Mother, are you doing well? It's been 2 months since I transferred, and I'm doing very well. Ida is treating me well, and I've made some friends." They'd tease her constantly for her brutish and oafish behavior. She was sure they meant well. She was also sure it'd take her a while longer to find a husband. On another day, she'd sigh, finding herself all alone at a school party. Placido would greet her, looking for Ida, but apparently she'd been feverish since last night and couldn't be here. Hearing he was worried, she knew it. He totally liked her.
Ooh, I knew it. Spicy love affairs when it comes to the princes of the kingdom. Ooh.
He'd soon ask Mimi for a dance, and she flusteredly refused, not being used to dancing. He told her not to worry though, because having fun was what was most important. So she agreed. The two danced, and she was caught off guard by his charm. Soon, she'd catch on and dance with much gusto. She was starving after that workout and had to munch. He thought Ida was fortunate to have a best friend like her, and brought up the reason Ida first went to stay at Mimi's place back then was due to stress from the noble's education she was having. He thought she was experiencing it all again. Mimi never knew that. She thought Ida was always very dependable and ladylike. She promised again to do what she could to protect her. He muttered that if the two of them were to debut at the graduation party, Ida might feel better. Maria would learn from Ida that students 1 year above them would be graduating soon. Everyone would have their eyes on Prince Renato. Mimi would tell Ida about all the fun she had at today's party, especially since she got to eat a lot of meat. She wanted to ask about Ida's feelings towards Prince Placido, but feigned against it. Instead, she turned the conversation to the upcoming graduation party and finding herself a marriage partner. Mimi would later write her parents again, this time explaining she'd be getting lady training from Ida. She was waiting for Prince Placido to introduce her to someone. Ida came in and helped Mimi get ready. She thought Mimi's hair was quite sparkly, just like the wheat harvest in the autumn. Mimi likewise complimented Ida's blonde hair, smooth and glossy, but struggled with tactful words, calling it a beautiful golden gold. Ida said once they were back, she'd definitely have to teach Mimi more refined language. On the carriage ride there, Mimi asked why Ida didn't ride with her fiancé, and Ida explained he was very busy. Mimi thought if she was Ida, she'd force herself to meet him no matter what. Ida's chuckle would be cut short by an abrupt carriage stop. The two peered outside to see Lady Eleonora's family carriage blocking in front of theirs. They'd check on her, but she told them to leave her alone. She had no intention of relying on Ida for help. Ida understood and decided that she and Mimi would go on ahead. Mimi was worried about Eleonora though. They'd arrive at the graduation party, and it was quite an event to behold. All the important people were here. The girls would scream at the arrival of the two princes of Rubini and rush over to see them. They gushed over their handsomeness, absolutely adoring Renato's aloof attitude, as well as the wrinkles in his brows. They thought Placido was adorable as well. Eleonora would follow behind them, and Mimi asked why Renato was being escorted by someone who wasn't his fiancée. All the girls came swarming, asking Ida the same question. Seeing Eleonora clinging to him again, they thought this was a slight towards her. Mimi cut into the crowd, telling Ida she was thirsty, so they should head outside and get a drink. She couldn't believe those girls would ask such inconsiderate things, but Ida understood everyone wanted to know Prince Renato, and as a consequence, want to know about her as well. Ida accepted that it was tiring, wondering if their worry was genuine or not. But Mimi assured her she only said how she genuinely felt, so there was no need to worry about her. The two girls giggled, the mood much better. Mimi got up, seeing Renato escorting Eleonora. Others mentioned how since Eleonora's carriage broke down, His Highness let her ride with him. Mimi wondered what was going on. The prince suddenly looked back, and their eyes met. He began his approach, and since she saw him, he told her that made things easier. He grabbed Mimi's hand, mistaking her for Ida, and declaring an end to their betrothal.
Dude, he spent so little time with his fiancée. He doesn't even know what Ida looks like.
Placido asked his brother the meaning of this, and Renato told Placido he was being tricked. Ida was jealous of his relationship with Eleonora, and harassed and stalked her behind their backs. Eleonora nervously tried pointing out that wasn't Ida, but he continued his rant, saying he could not allow aside those who would use their influence to hurt others. Apparently, his attendant investigated the matter and had all the evidence. Renato demanded Ida's suspension from the academy and for her to apologize to Eleonora here and now. The people around spoke in hushed whispers about all the drama. Mimi wondered what she was supposed to do here. She looked back, seeing Ida was sad, and remembered all she said about protecting her, the dear friendship they've had since childhood. She grabbed Renato's wrist, telling him he had it all wrong. She whipped her hand back, revealing she was Maria Anovazzi, and his fiancé was right behind her. And what he needed to do right now was get himself a pair of glasses. He couldn't believe this. Everyone shook their heads in agreement.
Duke Amethyst fell over from the shocking turn of events
of you not liking the video or subscribing to the channel. Oh, you have? Smoochies. Here on my Shoujo Weekly, my storytelling is like a gentle kiss. And you wouldn't want to miss all the amazing stories I'm covering in the shoujo genre. I even have a whole playlist with hour-long plus content when you finish this one. So come on, hit that subscribe and I'll be your guy. Mimi was pissed about the awful party. Renato's attendant, Raimondo, apologized on his behalf. They sent Duke Amethyst home along with the royal physician. Placido also felt really bad. The two turned towards Renato to chew him out, and Renato apologized with a sweating meekness.
Talking all that, and now he not even getting his words out. Yup.
As long as he was sorry, Mimi sternly told him that was enough. Ida told her not to be too hard on the prince. He said that he was truly reflecting on what he had done. Also, this incident might have delayed his inauguration as crown prince. Mimi didn't care about that. She was worried about Ida's formal debut for her engagement. And to this, Ida's face saddened. She admitted Prince Renato was never keen on their engagement in the first place. She honestly expected him to annul it at some point. But even then, Mimi felt like it didn't mean he could just do that in front of everyone back there. On top of the fact, there was no way Ida ever bullied Eleonora. She questioned how he could even mistake her for his fiancée. Ida was understanding though. The two of them rarely met each other, and this made Mimi more angry. The prince didn't even know Ida's face. Despite all this, Ida told Mimi not to rebuke him. The prince was very wise and thoughtful of his peers. He hasn't done anything to indicate that so far. Ida was more worried about Mimi. She gathered a lot of attention back there. Hopefully, it didn't affect her prospects in looking for a husband. Well, Ida obviously doesn't know Renato was the male lead yet. Mimi was startled. She forgot she was so unpopular, she had to transfer abroad to look for a spouse.
Yeah, I feel like there's nothing going on in this girl's brain, I'm not gonna lie.
And she just had a failed engagement even though she never had one. She called herself a downright disgrace. The most wretched lady ever. She had to cover her mouth because her thoughts leaked out again. Ida was sure Renato would do something to fix that, and she would resolve to help the misunderstanding as well. Mimi was thankful, but she thought it was all that stupid prince's fault. Next time they met, she was going to beat the crap out of him. In comparison, she thought Prince Placido was really nice. He called out to her when she was alone, and he wasn't at fault today, but he was still apologizing so much. Mimi then mentioned Placido seemed close with Ida, and Ida got flustered, replying, "I wouldn't say that. It's just we've known each other since we were little." Giving a much expected, lug-headed response, Mimi replied, "Really? I thought you and Prince Placido fit each other, though." But now, she could see it plain as day. Heading to bathe, she wondered if Ida really liked Placido. So maybe Prince Stupid ending their engagement with her was a good thing. But then, what about Ida's reputation? Thinking too much for her brain, Mimi finally passed out. Rai would serve Mimi tea and dessert, letting her know Renato would be here as soon as he finished business. She couldn't believe they invited her here. The castle's drawing room was spectacular. The dessert was both excellent and fragrant. She assumed the pastry chef must be of a top level. Renato would enter with a sincere apology for making her wait. His smile sparkled, and she was surprised he actually got her family name, Anovasi, right. Most people got it wrong. That's a good point, actually. Is she supposed to be Italian? Anovasi. Anovasi. He truly apologized for what had transpired. Placido had explained to him her purpose for moving here, and he deeply lamented tarnishing her reputation. But if he really felt that way, she felt he should have set her up with someone. Since she blurted out what she was thinking, he considered it. He didn't mind though. He explained the reason he didn't recognize Ida. It was because he hadn't seen her for the longest time, having left the duty of escorting her to Placido. They were childhood friends, so he at least remembered her hair color. That's why he mistook Mimi for her. He didn't think anyone else could have such beautiful golden hair.
Ooh, see her blushing? Dang. Maybe Renato got a little bit of riz, you know?
Mimi then asked why he did all that in public at the very important graduation party. He was known to be wise, so he surely had to understand the repercussions could have led to the loss of his crown prince position. And to this, he admitted that he thought if he were disinherited, then all his problems would be solved. She wasn't expecting that, and now she needed the tea in full. With him sullen, she suddenly leaned on him and smugly told him to just whisper the details in her ear. She promised not to tell anyone. It made him chuckle, and he'd whisper to her that truthfully, Placido liked Ida. The tea was too spicy for her. Now the two of them could mutually love each other. She wondered if she should tell Renato about that. No, wait! That was Ida's secret. But we'd soon find out our brain-empty heroine said her thoughts out loud in front of him. He just told her to keep it a secret. He thought it was easy to figure out Placido's feelings. He'd always been thinking about Ida since they were little. However, Ida's father wanted her to marry the crown prince, so losing his position, Placido could become heir, and everything would be solved. But he made one crucial mistake at that moment, and even dragged Mimi into this mess. Remembering Renato wanted to make things up to her, she suggested he bring her some food.
Oh my gosh, that's all she could think about?
He offered marbled steak, and she just lit up. She then suddenly pointed at him, telling him to make sure he did something about his lack of sleep. She could see his dark circles. He got it. He's had trouble sleeping on top of his official duties. Meanwhile, she could fall asleep in 3 seconds. So, she decided to teach him House Anovasi's special counting song. She'd count all the way to 10 with intense martial arts movements, leaving him utterly stunned. She hoped he'd remembered this when he tried to sleep. Whenever her little brother saw it, he laughed his belly out and passed out. The prince broke out into laughter. She was treating him like a child. She kept making funny faces at him. He really couldn't stop laughing. He had to yield, but he was too exhausted from all the laughter. And she was glad to hear that. An empty stomach and lack of sleep were humans' worst enemies. She told him to get some rest, and he understood. He'd grab her hair gently, saying, "Before I sleep tonight, I will think of your face." She was flush. Heading back, Mimi had a much better impression of Renato, but she had no idea the villainess was watching her carriage pass by. Eleonora thought she was a thieving cat. Mimi's mouth watered over the delicious steak Renato had served at the restaurant. He was glad she enjoyed the taste. He would have been distraught if she didn't. She wondered if he was okay to treat her like this. She was fine splitting the bill. However, he told her this was a treat for how she helped him. Every time he remembered her counting song, his heart was filled with warmth. He hadn't slept this well in years. This made her gulp. After their pleasant meal, he had to depart on urgent business. He couldn't see her off, but he prepared a carriage for her. It was a little bit different from the carriage she came in. They had no idea the sticker would peel off the carriage, revealing the true seal. Mimi would eventually peer outside the window, having no idea where she was heading. The kidnappers would present her to Eleonora, who cockily called her witless for not even realizing she was being kidnapped, even calling her Maria Antavazzi. Mimi would retort back that Prince Renato actually got her name right. She knew exactly how to get under Eleonora's skin. Eleonora was pissed because she almost managed to seduce Prince Renato, but all they talked about was her dad, who he met, where he went, etc. That's when the prince found out about her dad's bribery and caught him. Mimi got it now. Renato knew about that all along, and that's why he allowed Eleonora to tag along with him. It was clear to Mimi just how crafty Renato was. She could see he really cared for this country. Mimi told Eleonora for her sake, she should mend her ways and live an honest life. And to this, Eleonora threatened Mimi, telling her to write a letter. Mimi didn't get it at first, asking if she was to write a letter as a thank you for the steak. But no, Eleonora was going to ransom Mimi for her father's life. She was taking Mimi hostage before fleeing the country. Renato freaked out, having heard from Ida that Mimi hadn't returned. The reason he had to leave was because Eleonora's father was about to start his testimony. He felt guilty for leaving her alone, but now he was going to act and figure things out. Back at the hideout, Mimi easily undid her bindings. She tried to escape, but was a little too loud. Meanwhile, Renato and Rai were interrogating a bystander who witnessed the carriage. With the information they gathered, the prince sped on his horse as fast as he could. Eleonora thought they had Mimi, but she'd suddenly instant transmission and run away. She lured them out into an open field and let them attack first so she could whoop them. House Anavazi was renowned for their martial arts. She kicked the assailant's blade away. The reason she, as the youngest of her siblings, was raised as heir was because among her sisters, she was the strongest. Knocking out the final bad guy with an uppercut, she wasn't expecting to see the prince appear. She got so embarrassed and pretended like she was so scared, trying her best to act feminine and meek. But he was really impressed by her skills. She was shocked to learn he'd been watching for the moment she ran away. And now, her life as a noble lady was over. Eleonora and her goons were arrested, and thus, an end to this event. Mimi questioned why she was sitting on Renato's lap on the way back. Instead of answering that, he just said he was sure the authorities would investigate Eleonora as well. She was apparently involved in the bribery too. He'd suddenly pull her into his shoulder, whispering, "It must have been terrifying for you. Poor thing." She began to tear up because no one ever said that to her before. She put herself back together quickly to thank him, then asked him to let go. He responded, no. And somehow, she couldn't break free. He wanted to call her Mimi now too, and reminded her that he slept well when he thought of her, and he really meant that. His duty as crown prince, the country's politics and economy. It's been so long since he could forget them and feel at peace. It was like all the fog in his head had been lifted. She thought he was talking like he had a revelation from God, and he thought perhaps this was indeed God's guidance. And now, he asked her to marry him? What? The maids thought Mimi looked particularly charming today, dressed like a young lady in every way. Enough to surely receive praise from the king and queen. Mimi was nervous. She began panicking. Following the kidnapping incident, Baron Cassiari and Eleonora were arrested for bribery and kidnapping. After that, the inauguration ceremony was held. Renato was officially titled Crown Prince, and Mimi became more nervous than ever around him. She panicked, learning she was going to meet his parents with a thick pamphlet discussing the date and time. Renato really decided everything already. Today was also the day they'd be setting the date for their engagement ceremony. Mimi wondered what Renato's family was like, hoping they were just as friendly as Prince Placido. She started pacing so fastly out of frantic thoughts, her maids couldn't keep up. She's insanely fast, all worried over the need for her to be ladylike and to not do anything weird. She'd reassure herself, saying she practiced a lot with Ida, but now found herself completely lost and without her maids. The maids apologized to Renato for losing her. He understood. It wasn't their fault. He commanded his men to search the area for her thoroughly. They'd eventually find her sitting on the ground. Renato asked if something was wrong, and she bashfully pulled a puppy from under her dress. It was lost in the bushes, apparently. It turned out to be the queen's mother's puppy, Macaron. She'd been searching for him desperately and was thankful Mimi found him. Mimi felt bad she made everyone wait, even ruining her clothes. And the king broke out in uncontrolled laughter. He thought she was so interesting. Placido soon followed suit, even though it was rude. Renato would look at her face, pluck the leaf off her head, and say, "That's my Mimi," with much affection. The two laughed with joy. The king had never seen Renato look like this. He'd bring attention to his wife over this, but her face was stern. She turned coldly with ambivalence and walked away. But in any case, Mimi was officially selected as crown princess that day. Later, Mimi would hum and skip without a single thought in her head. She wanted to do her crown princess training properly to become the perfect lady. Rai thought she was ridiculous. Ida would politely tell her not to skip in the hallways. People have been clinging to the walls to just not bump into her. The both of them had to do their best in princess training. Mimi would listen, but felt concerned since Ida was the crown princess before, and her being the new one might damage her reputation. However, Ida said it was no concern, and in fact, seemed a lot happier these days. Mimi then let Ida know she wanted to postpone training until after the next break. She was going back home, excited to see her little brother and the rest of her family. She then remembered she was supposed to meet Prince Renato at the palace today, and hurried off, saying she'd be back home before dinner. Ida and Renato would spot Mimi outside, coming across Rosalia Pinotti, a girl who once aimed for Renato as well. This girl had harassed Ida many times before. This was your typical stuck-up girl going, my, Lady Maria, good day to you. Mimi returned the greeting, and Rosa hit her with, I was wondering why I smelt bumpkin stench coming this way. Her cronies gassed her up, saying, ew. Mimi reeked of the unpleasant smell of pasture, and hoped Renato wouldn't get fed up with her bumpkin stench. This is cause they've never played a farming sim. They're completely missing out on romancing and raising farm animals. Mimi sprinted towards Rosa, telling her that her perfume smelled amazing. Apparently, House Pinotti's specialty was perfume. They also did rub on scented essential oils as well. Mimi asked Rosa for some right now. Rosa maintained her smugness. Presenting the oil, she went on about how her family's perfume wasn't just about fragrance, but had moisturizing qualities as well. They also added seashell powders, which helped brighten skin. A single rub, and Mimi was elated. Her skin was sparkling from it. She then says something to the equivalent of, rub on oil so wowie. Me take you some homie. And Rosalia didn't understand. Was that how they spoke back in Mimi's home kingdom of Muro? Mimi got pumped, hearing Rosalia was familiar. She was happy Rosa even bothered to learn about her tiny little kingdom. Rosa tried to escape Mimi's grasp and friendliness, but it wasn't working. Mimi imagined going to Rosa's family beach house and splashing around in the blue ocean and eating tons of delicious seafood as well, ending the evenings with lighted fireworks, or even watching the evening sky. Mimi was so endearing, she somehow caught Rosa in her imagination. Mimi didn't have a swimsuit, however, and asked Rosa to help her pick one when the time came. Rosa got so embarrassed and acted like a tsundere. She told Mimi she'd invite her on a summer vacation, as well as a reservation for them to visit a swimsuit boutique. She'd then run off with their cronies. Ida would assure Rai that no matter who came towards Mimi's way, she'd always act with best intentions. People like Rosalia always end up like that after meeting her. As for those who resort to violence, well, we all know how that goes. Rai then remembered there was something he was supposed to give Maria, and dashed off after her. He'd search all over, unable to find her, until she called to him from above in a tree. She jumped down to show him this lost kitty. He sighed, reminded of the Queen's reaction to her introduction. The Queen didn't seem to like her. Ida had told the Queen a lot about her all the time. Mimi figured she must have been disappointed with who she was for real. Rai explained the Queen was strict with her conduct. Even if the King and Crown Prince favored Mimi, it seemed the Queen still had her doubts on whether she was worthy to be crowned princess. Mimi wanted to get along with her, especially since she was Renato's mother. Rai thought there was no use dwelling over what happened. He handed her an invitation from the Queen for tea. This would likely be a test. Where Mimi was waiting, Renato burst in panting, apologizing for keeping her waiting. She thought it was nice he rushed all the way here for her, despite being busy. His workload increased since inauguration, which was why he'd been longing to see her again. This got her blushing bright red. So smooth, but not smooth enough for me to make my fourth Saikuno joke this week. My XP bar is too low for that. He said her hairpin looked lovely on her. She detailed that most of the girls of House Anavazi wore it as a symbol of their lineage. Each made their own unique designs based on their family crest. Once married, they add their husband's family crest to it. Renato was happy to add his royal sigil to it. She was worried that it'd be too much, and that she wasn't worthy of it, but he thought that wasn't true. He wanted to honor her family's tradition. This got her heart racing. She'd be sure to tell them during her trip back. And now he was worried she might not come back here. But with her reassuring she would, since she had school, and she wanted to see him, of course, he lit up, putting his head on her shoulder. She thought there was no need for him to worry so much, but for him to take his time to be with her, and even notice her hairpin, it made her so happy. That said, she might not want to leave her home after seeing her baby brother again. Whoops. She said what she was thinking out loud again. But Renato was already used to that habit of hers. And so was Rai. He handed the prince the list he requested. It was a list of gifts to present to House Anavazi. He hoped they'd like it. Mimi responded they'd gladly accept anything, as long as it wasn't the flu. The prince hated the idea of being apart from her for so long. The trip alone to Muro took 6 days. He pulled her onto his lap, telling Mimi she could stay there as long as she liked when he went with her next time. Mimi got embarrassed with Raimondo watching. but she couldn't escape Renato's grasp for some reason. His slow movements actually made it hard for her to escape. She eventually gave up. Renato smooched her hair. His doting was too overwhelming for her. Rai would then tell Renato Maria had to meet the queen for tea soon and to let her go. He didn't want to though. It was his mother's fault for scheduling tea during his time with Mimi. Mimi felt she didn't have much of a choice though, since Her Majesty wasn't very fond of her. Although, Renato didn't think that was true. He assigned knights to escort her there, not to protect her, but to make sure she didn't get lost. Mimi suddenly sensed someone was watching her. She was amazed looking at the garden. The queen arrived, and Mimi stood to greet her. The atmosphere was strict and stern. The queen sighed, and Mimi panicked. Was the queen sick of her only after 5 seconds? The queen then picked a plate full of sweets, passing it to Mimi, telling her they were delicious and to feel free to eat first. Mimi remained calm, acting her best to maintain the image of a proper lady, through small bites, drinking tea without making a sound, and smiling constantly, until she accidentally slammed the table and said out loud her thoughts of, "How's that?" The queen looked furious, asking if that was directed towards her. Mimi grew frantic and apologized for speaking her thoughts out loud again. Even so, the queen remarked her etiquette to be satisfactory. Mimi then sensed it again. She grabbed the queen to get down, using the table to shield them from the fire of arrows. They came from the palace windows. Mimi wondered who would attack them. Mimi was so concerned, she offered to take the queen back to her room. But the queen couldn't take it anymore. She shoved Mimi off, but not for the reason she expected. The queen thought Mimi was so dashing, she couldn't get enough of her. Mimi was just as strong as Ida said. She wished she could have seen Mimi fight the assassins hired by the Cassiaris. Mimi asked that she please stop slapping the ground. She was going to get her hands dirty, but the queen didn't care anymore. Mimi would have the knights take her away, having no idea a man was watching from afar, as he uttered, "You're more interesting than I thought, Mimi." Who is this mysterious man? Find out on next week's part by subscribing to my channel. But for now, watch this next video. It's me, ComfyTea. I'll see you all in the next one.